Armin was a forest ranger who had spent most of his life in the mountains. He knew the land better than most people knew their own homes. Every trail, every sharp turn, every narrow bridge was familiar to him. The mountains were quiet, strong, and patient, just like Armin himself. He liked the silence because it helped him think clearly. His daily work was simple. He checked paths, watched the weather, and made sure no one was lost or in danger. Tourists came only in summer, and even then, very few reached the higher areas. Most of the time, Armin walked alone with only the sound of wind and trees around him. One morning, just after sunrise, Armin received an alert on his small tracking device. The signal was weak but steady. It showed activity in a zone where no building should exist. That place was marked empty on all official maps. No cabins, no research stations, no shelters. Armin checked the screen again to be sure. The signal did not disappear. This made him uneasy. He reported the alert to the main office, but the response was slow. The system showed no error. No explanation came back. Armin decided he would go himself. He believed that problems should be understood by seeing them directly. He packed his bag with food, water, and safety tools. He took his radio and started walking uphill. The path was narrow and cold. Snow covered parts of the ground, even though the season was not harsh. The sky was clear, but the air felt heavy. As Armin moved forward, the forest grew quiet. No birds. No small animals. Even the wind felt weak. After some time, Armin noticed footprints in the snow. They were not fresh, but they were clear. The strange part was their direction. They went toward the deeper mountain, not back. No signs showed anyone leaving the area. That did not make sense. Armin followed the prints carefully. Hours passed before he saw something that made him stop completely. Between tall trees stood a small wooden cabin. It looked strong and well built. The wood was clean. The roof was solid. The windows were clear. Nothing about it suggested age or damage. Armin felt his heart slow down. He was sure this cabin should not exist. He walked around it slowly. The ground was clean, almost polished. No leaves. No wild plants. It looked as if someone took care of this place daily. Armin placed his hand on the wall. The wood felt warm. That was impossible in this cold mountain air. He took a deep breath and opened the door. Inside, the cabin was bright. A soft white light filled the room, even though no lamps were on. The air inside was warm and calm. The furniture was simple but perfectly placed. A chair near the table. Shelves along the wall. Everything looked planned. On the table were papers arranged neatly. Armin picked one up. The paper showed dates and notes. His eyes widened as he read them. Some dates were from the future. Some mentioned events that had not happened yet. The writing was clear and careful. Armin felt a cold feeling move through his body. He stepped further inside. The door closed quietly behind him. He turned quickly, but nothing was wrong with the door. It was simply closed. The walls of the cabin were covered with maps. Large maps. Small maps. Maps of mountains, cities, rivers, and borders. Many places were marked with circles and lines. Some places were labeled with notes. Everything looked planned in great detail. Armin walked slowly toward one wall. His breathing became heavier when he saw a board placed in the center. On it was a list of names. He scanned the list carefully. Then he saw it. His own name was written clearly at the top. Below it was today's date. Armin stepped back. His hands began to shake. His mind tried to find a simple answer, but nothing made sense. He reached for his radio and tried to call the main office. The radio made no sound. Not even static. Outside the window, the forest looked the same. Silent. Still. Watching. Armin realized something important in that moment. This cabin was not built by chance. It was not forgotten. It was waiting. waiting for him. The light inside the cabin grew slightly brighter. Armin stood still, understanding that whatever this place was, it was connected to something far bigger than a simple mountain mystery. And this was only the beginning. Armin stood inside the cabin for a long time without moving. His eyes slowly traveled across the walls again. Every map, every mark, every note felt important. His name on the board was still there. It did not fade. It did not change. It stayed solid, like it had always been meant to be there. He took a slow breath and tried to calm himself. Panic would not help. Armin had learned long ago that fear makes the mind weak. He needed to understand this place step by step. He began by checking the shelves along the wall. They were filled with notebooks and folders. Each one had a label written in clean handwriting. Some labels showed names of towns. Some showed dates. Others showed simple words like river zone, mountain path, and restricted area. Armin picked one notebook and opened it. Inside were records, daily notes, weather changes, movement reports, all written with great detail. Whoever wrote these notes had watched the land closely. Armin read page after page. The writer knew things only trained rangers should know. Trail shifts, animal behavior, hidden water paths. This person was not an outsider. Then Armin noticed something even more strange. Some pages described events before they happened. One page talked about a storm that Armin remembered clearly. It had happened years ago and caused damage across the region. The notebook described it perfectly, including the exact day and hour, but the page was dated 2 weeks before the storm ever came. Armin closed the notebook slowly. He moved to another shelf and found folders sealed with thick paper bands. He opened one carefully. Inside were photos, satellite images, ground photos, even pictures taken from inside buildings. Armin recognized some of the places. Government offices, remote stations, control rooms. His chest tightened. This cabin was watching more than just forests. He walked toward the back of the cabin and found a small room he had not noticed before. The door was half hidden behind a shelf. Armin pushed it open gently. Inside was a narrow space filled with screens and equipment. All of it looked advanced. Too advanced for a cabin hidden in the mountains. One screen suddenly turned on. Armin froze. Lines of data appeared. Numbers moved fast. A map of the country filled the screen. A blinking point showed his exact location. Another screen showed weather systems moving across regions. A third screen displayed short messages, each one marked completed. Armin felt his heart beat faster. This was not random. This was control. A soft sound came from behind him. He turned quickly. A speaker mounted on the wall came to life. A calm voice spoke, slow and clear. Armin was told not to be afraid. The voice said the cabin was a monitoring site. It existed to protect the nation from large dangers. Some dangers could not be seen by normal systems. They required human judgment. The voice explained that the cabin had been active for many years. Very few people ever found it. Even fewer were allowed to enter. Those who did were chosen carefully. Not by chance but by pattern. Armin listened closely. The voice said Armin had been watched for a long time. His choices, his honesty, his ability to stay calm under pressure, his respect for rules and people. These qualities mattered. Armin asked who the voice belonged to. The voice replied that it was part of a network, a system designed to guide, not command. Humans still made the final decisions. The system only showed paths. Armin did not know if he should believe this, but nothing in the cabin felt careless. Everything was too organized, too precise. The voice then showed Armin something on the screen. A list of upcoming events appeared. Weather shifts, supply failures, infrastructure stress points. Some were small, others were serious. Each event had a suggested response plan. Armin realized something heavy. If these predictions were true, this system could save lives. But it could also control them. The voice told Armin that the system needed a new guardian. Someone who could walk between technology and nature. Someone who understood land and people. Someone who would not abuse power. Armin felt the weight of those words. He was only a ranger. He never asked for such responsibility. He looked at the screen again. One of the listed events was close in time. Very close. A landslide risk near a mountain village. The time estimate was within days. Armin knew that village. Families lived there. Children played near the slopes. He had to act. Armin asked the voice one last question. Why him? The voice replied that Armin had already proven himself many times without knowing. He had chosen safety over comfort. Truth over reward. Silence over attention. The screens slowly dimmed. The cabin returned to quiet. Armin stood alone again, but he was not the same person who had entered. He understood now that the cabin was not just watching the nation. It was asking someone to protect it. And Armin knew his answer would change everything that followed. Armin did not leave the cabin right away. He stood near the table and looked at the maps once more. His mind was busy, but his heart was calm. He understood that fear would not help him now. If the system inside the cabin was real, then the warning about the mountain village was serious. He packed the notebooks and maps back into their places carefully. He did not touch anything that did not belong to him. Before leaving, he looked at the board with his name again. It was still there. He took a deep breath and opened the door. The cold mountain air rushed in. Outside, the forest felt different. The silence was no longer empty. It felt alert, as if the land itself was watching him. Armin started his journey downhill toward the nearest station. The path was steep, but his steps were steady. His mind focused on the village. When he reached the station, he reported the landslide risk. At first, the officers were unsure. The weather reports showed no immediate danger. But Armin spoke clearly and calmly. He explained soil movement, snow weight, and recent small shifts in the ground. His experience gave his words strength. After some discussion, the officers agreed to send a small inspection team. Armin did not mention the cabin. The next day, Armin went to the village himself. He walked through narrow paths and greeted the people he knew. The village was peaceful. Children laughed. Elders sat near their homes. No one expected danger. Armin spoke to the village leader. He explained the risk and suggested temporary safety steps. Move animals away from the slope. Keep children indoors near the hillside. Prepare safe routes. The leader trusted Armin. He had helped the village before. People began to follow the advice slowly. That night, rain began to fall. It was light at first, then stronger. The ground absorbed water quickly. Near midnight, a deep sound echoed through the mountains. A part of the slope broke free. Rocks and soil moved downward with force. Because of the warning, no one was harmed. At sunrise, Armin stood near the edge of the damaged area. The path where children usually played was buried. The village was safe only because of early action. News spread fast. Officials praised the quick response. Reports called it careful planning and strong experience. No one knew how close the danger truly was. Armin returned to the cabin later that day. Inside, the screens turned on as he entered. A message appeared stating that the first test was successful. The system adjusted future predictions based on his actions. Armin did not feel proud. He felt responsible. Over the following weeks, Armin returned to the cabin often. Each visit showed him more. The system revealed patterns in weather, movement, and human activity. It did not force decisions. It waited for his judgment. Sometimes the warnings were small. Sometimes they were serious. Armin handled each one carefully. He guided teams to repair weak bridges before they failed. He redirected hikers away from unsafe paths. He shared quiet warnings with trusted officials. Lives were protected without panic. But the pressure grew. One evening, Armin found a new file waiting for him. It was different from the others. It did not show a natural event. It showed social tension, supply stress, rising fear in certain regions. The system predicted unrest if nothing changed. Armin felt uneasy. This was not his world. He was a ranger, not a leader. The system offered suggestions. Improve communication. Adjust resource flow. Reduce pressure points. Armin knew these actions required higher authority. He faced a hard choice. Stay silent and protect only what he could reach, or step beyond his role and risk exposure. That night, Armin did not sleep. In the morning, he chose honesty. He contacted a senior official he trusted. He shared evidence without revealing the cabin's location. Data, patterns, logical explanations. It was enough to raise concern. Plans were made quietly. Supplies were redirected. Communication improved. Tension eased before it could grow. Again, no one knew the full story. The cabin watched silently. During one visit, Armin noticed something new. Another name appeared on the board below his own. A person from a different region. A different role. Armin understood. He was not meant to do this alone forever. The system was growing. Slowly. Carefully. But with growth came risk. What if someone with bad intent was chosen next? What if the system made a mistake? Armin placed his hand on the board. He felt the weight of every choice he had made. He realized the true test was not the warnings or the actions. The true test was whether he could protect the system from being misused. And that test had only just begun. Armin felt the pressure grow with every visit to the cabin. The system had become quieter, but its silence carried meaning. New data appeared less often, yet when it did, it was deeper and more complex. The warnings were no longer only about land and weather. They were about people, systems, and trust. Armin understood that the work was changing him. He spent his days walking familiar trails, greeting locals, and doing his normal duties. To everyone else, he was the same calm ranger. Inside, he carried the knowledge of risks that could shape the future. He spoke carefully. He acted slowly. Every step mattered. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the mountains, Armin returned to the cabin and found the lights already on. That had never happened before. The screens showed a single message. A review phase had begun. Armin read the message twice. The system explained that when multiple guardians were active, a review was required. Decisions made by one person could affect many. Balance was necessary. Transparency within the system was important. Armin felt a knot form in his chest. The board on the wall now showed 3 names. His was still at the top. 2 others were listed below. One from a coastal region. One from a large city. Armin did not know them, but he knew what their roles might involve. The system presented a question. Should the existence of the network remain hidden, or should limited disclosure begin? Armin stepped back and sat down. This was not a simple choice. Secrecy had protected the system from misuse, but it also placed all responsibility on a few people. Disclosure could bring support, but it could also bring danger. Armin thought about power. He had seen how power changed people. Even good people could lose balance when they believed they alone knew the truth. Armin never wanted that path. He asked the system to show past outcomes. The screens displayed models. In some, secrecy led to failure when a guardian made a mistake and no one could correct it. In others, open systems collapsed under pressure and noise. There was no perfect answer. Armin knew one thing clearly. If the truth came out by accident, the damage would be far greater than if it came out by choice. He made a careful decision. He selected limited disclosure. The system accepted the choice. Over the next weeks, Armin helped prepare reports. Clean, logical, focused on outcomes, not origins. Trusted officials received information framed as advanced forecasting models. No mention of the cabin. No mention of guardians. At first, there was doubt. Then results followed. Predictions matched reality with strong accuracy. Small crises were avoided. Resources were placed before shortages appeared. Confidence grew quietly. But quiet success attracts attention. One day, a message appeared in the cabin marked urgent. A journalist team had noticed unusual coordination across agencies. They were asking questions. Patterns were visible to anyone who looked closely. Armin felt the walls close in. The system suggested caution. Delay responses. Reduce signals. But Armin knew delay only made curiosity stronger. He met with the other two guardians through secure channels provided by the system. For the first time, he heard their voices. They were calm, thoughtful, just as unsure as he was. Together, they discussed the situation. One guardian believed the truth should stay hidden forever. Another believed the public deserved to know everything. Armin stood between them. He spoke about trust. He said people did not need every detail to trust outcomes. They needed honesty about purpose, protection, safety, balance. After long discussion, they agreed on one step. A controlled reveal. Not of the cabin. Not of the system's full reach. But of a special task force using advanced methods to protect the nation from natural and logistical risks. The announcement was prepared carefully. No drama. No strong claims. Just facts. When it was released, the reaction was strong. People were surprised by how much had been prevented without their knowledge. News channels discussed it non-stop. Experts debated methods. Citizens asked questions. But fear did not rise. Respect did. Armin watched the coverage from a distance. He did not feel pride. He felt relief. Back in the cabin, the board changed again. The three names remained, but beneath them appeared a single line. System stability improved. Armin leaned against the wall and closed his eyes. For the first time since entering the cabin, he felt lighter. But peace never lasts long. A new message appeared. External interest detected. Not from journalists. Not from citizens. From someone with resources, influence, and ambition. Someone who wanted control. Armin straightened his posture. He knew this moment would define everything. The system could guide, but the choice would be human. He looked at the maps, the screens, and the quiet walls of the cabin. This place had protected the nation silently. Now it needed protection itself. And Armin was ready to stand between it and those who would use it for the wrong reasons. Armin stood alone in the cabin as the final message stayed on the main screen. External interest detected. The words were simple, but their meaning was heavy. This was the moment he had feared since the first day he stepped inside this place. The system that protected the nation was now at risk of being claimed by someone who wanted control, not balance. Armin did not panic. He had learned that fear clouds judgment. He reviewed the data calmly. The system showed patterns of access attempts, indirect questions, and unusual movements near protected zones. Someone was testing boundaries, trying to understand how decisions were made. Armin contacted the other two guardians through the secure channel. They spoke openly. The coastal guardian worried about pressure from powerful groups. The city guardian warned about political interest growing fast. All three understood that exposure could destroy everything they had built. Armin shared his thoughts. He said the system must never belong to one person, one group, or one office. It existed to protect people, not to rule them. If control was forced, the system would become dangerous. The system itself offered an option. A final safeguard. It could reduce its own visibility, limit predictive range, and divide access across multiple independent layers. No single guardian would ever see the full picture again. Decisions would require cooperation. This meant less power, but more safety. Armin did not hesitate. He approved the safeguard. The other guardians agreed. The system began restructuring immediately. Screens dimmed. Data streams slowed. Access points shifted. The cabin itself changed. Some maps faded. Some equipment powered down. The system was choosing humility over strength. At the same time, Armin took action outside. He shared warnings with trusted officials about rising interest. He advised stronger oversight, shared responsibility, and clear limits. He did not accuse anyone. He spoke with reason and care. The response was cautious, but effective. Requests for deeper access were denied politely. Oversight committees were formed. Rules were written. Boundaries became clear. The person who sought control moved on, finding no direct path forward. Days passed. Then weeks. The nation remained safe. Small risks were still detected. Quiet adjustments continued. The system worked slower, but wiser. One evening, Armin returned to the cabin and noticed something different. The board on the wall had changed. His name was still there, but it no longer stood alone at the top. All three names were aligned equally. Below them, a simple message appeared. Guardian phase complete. Armin felt a deep calm. The system no longer needed constant guidance. It had learned from human judgment. It had limits. It had checks. It had balance. Armin knew his role was ending. The system spoke one last time through the cabin speaker. It thanked him for protecting purpose over power. It said the future would be shaped by many small good choices, not one perfect system. Armin nodded silently. He gathered his things and looked around the cabin one final time. The light was softer now. The room felt less heavy. This place had never been about mystery. It had been about responsibility. Armin stepped outside. The mountain air was cold and clean. The forest sounded alive again. Birds moved between trees. Wind passed through branches with gentle force. He walked downhill toward his station, not as a guardian of a hidden system, but as a ranger once more. Life returned to normal. Or as normal as it could be. Months later, a report was released to the public. It spoke about improved disaster response, better planning, and stronger cooperation across regions. Experts praised the results. Citizens felt safer, even if they did not know why. No cabin was mentioned. No guardian was named. Armin continued his work quietly. He helped travelers. He guided lost hikers. He protected land and life in simple ways. Sometimes, when he passed a certain trail, he felt the presence of the cabin deep in the mountains. He knew it was still there, silent and watching, but no longer waiting for him. The nation never learned Armin's name. They never knew how close danger had come. They only knew that somehow, things worked when they mattered most. And that was enough. Armin smiled as he walked under the trees, content with the knowledge that true protection does not need attention. It only needs someone willing to do what is right, even when no one is watching.